Well, hello there. I am Dr. Paulina Van, author of Regala Healing, an evocative approach for self care, self understanding, and inner healing. And I am honored to host this show, The Poetry of Healing, right here on blackdoctor.org. And I just want to welcome you from all over the world, and we'd love to know where you're joining from. So please drop it in the chat. Wow. Today, we are honoring Father's Day, and we're going to talk about men and emotions. Yes, I put men and emotions in the same sentence. I reached out to my pastor, Bishop Keith Clark, because I know he will bring a real perspective to this topic. He is a man who expresses his emotions and guides other men to do the same. So he'll join us right after our brief centering exercise. And as you know, those of you who've been with me, we begin each session with just a brief centering exercise, and that's to help us focus and collect our energies and just embrace this time as a gift for yourself. So today, we're simply going to do a breathing exercise with a soothing gesture just for men to empower, and ladies, that empower you during this session. And so one of the ways, it's one of the soothing gestures, and you make a fist and put it over. So it's your left fist, put it over your heart, your left chest, and then put your hand over that. So it's almost like a power move. And I'm going to ask you to lower your gaze or close your eyes and just slowly take a deep breath in and feel your fist and hand expanding, being raised as you inhale. And then slowly exhale and feel it lower. One more time. Up. And you're breathing in and slowly exhale. And then the last time. Breathe in deeply this time. Deeply and slowly. And then out. And keeping your gaze lowered or your eyes closed, and you can lower your hands at this time. I ask you to take another deep breath in and out to notice where you are, okay? That you're here. Take another deep breath in and out to notice how your body feels. And lastly, take a nice deep breath in and out and enter this session. Welcome. For those viewers who have just joined us, I am Dr. Paulina Van, and today's show is all about men and their emotions. So stay with us because you are just in time to meet our guest. And I'd like to welcome to this show my pastor, spiritual leader, phenomenal man, Bishop Keith Clark. Hello.
Hey, Doc, how are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you doing?
I am doing amazing. How are you?
I'm good. Well, happy Father's Day to you.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And Bishop Clark is going to tell us, I'm going to invite you to tell the viewers a little bit about yourself. Now, you've been with us before, but there's some folks that may not have met you. So I'd love for you to tell a little bit about yourself. And since it's Father's Day, I hope you include those lovely ladies in your life. And of course, about your ministry. So welcome, Bishop Clark.
Thank you so much, Dr. Paulina Van. It's always an honor and a privilege to be in your company, and it's a delight to be on the show that I know brings so much healing and impact and blessings to so many people. And I'm so just grateful to God for your ministry and your gift and your love to see people better. and that's a blessing. My name's Keith Clark. I've been the senior pastor of Word Assembly, a family of churches, for the last 30 years. Can you imagine that? 30 years. Boy, every time I say that, I say, wow. 30 years. We are one church in 3 counties, and God has blessed us to be in Northern California. And I'm just excited about all of the things that God has allowed us to accomplish. Coming out of COVID, we have been ministering quite strongly and intentionally to men. We currently, right now, every Tuesday night at 7 p.m., we hold a life class that has spirituality, health, political awareness for men at Apartment C, which is a historical nightclub here in the city of Oakland. So we've got brotherhood Bible study at the nightclub, and it has been amazing. We're ministering anywhere between, I think our highest we had so far has been 55 men, and it's a combination of in person and on Zoom. And so I'm really, really excited about this. And so when you asked me to come on to talk about emotions and men's emotions, it was just right on point. And so I'm just grateful to God to be here. I am the proud father, and I say that with confidence. I hope that doesn't change. Of 5 beautiful girls: Kayla, Kaylin, Kelly, Kelsey, and Kaylee. And they are all doing extremely well. My lovely wife, Denise Marie Thayard Clark. And I'm just excited. This Father's Day, they asked me, Doc, say, Dad, what do you want for Father's Day? And I told them, just be consistent in giving the tithe. And and so I'm just excited about. We're gonna see how that Father's Day present turns out. But I'm just grateful to God. That's a little bit much. That's a little bit about me, and so I'm happy to be here with you, Doc. Thank you.
Well, I want to roll back. First of all, you said 30 years in ministry. You look like you're 30. I know you're not
Hey, bless
30.
you. Flattery will get you everywhere.
Okay, all right. Well, we got to hold up and we got to recognize
Yes.
our men.
Yeah.
That's truly, but from the heart. The other is I didn't realize that the men's group was meeting at Apartment C. That
Yeah.
is
Yeah. Yeah.
phenomenal.
Yes. Yeah.
So you have taken down the boundaries of coming into a church house for some men who might not feel comfortable within those walls, even though the church isn't the walls. But this is great. So we'll learn more about that men's group as we talk today. So I want to jump right in. Oh, before I move on, I want to say that you named everybody with a K. Okay, so all your lovely daughters, and I believe I've met all of them, and they are truly gifted, beautiful, kind young women. And well, your youngest one is still a teenager, but she's absolutely beautiful. And your
Yeah,
wife.
but she's 14 going on 24.
Oh yes,
That's
yeah,
what happens when you got older sisters,
yeah. But she's such a joy. And then your
Yes.
wife is absolutely beautiful. I remember when my daughter first saw her, when we were greeting each other at church, she says, "Oh, she's so beautiful," and that's externally and her heart. So
Yes. Yes.
God bless you and your
Yeah.
families. So we're going to jump in to men and emotions, but I always like to start so that our viewers and us are on the same plane or page about what we're talking about. So emotions are simply an inner feeling. Okay, in simple terms, they're inner feeling, but yet it gets complex because these feelings are reflected in your mind, your body, your behavior, And it really is in response to something, someone, some event that's personally significant to you. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And we typically associate emotions in men, okay,
Mm-hmm.
in men as a fatal character flaw,
Mm-hmm.
that they're being melodramatic,
Mm-hmm.
unrestrained, they're
Mm-hmm.
stuffing their feelings.
Mm-hmm.
So there's there are many myths about men and emotion, but I'd like to start, Bishop,
Mm-hmm.
with the myth about women are more emotional than men, and
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna kind of implode some of these myths.
Mm-hmm.
But not but and
Mm-hmm.
so where did this myth come from? So I did a little research and I found, we're going back centuries,
Mm-hmm.
but it has to do with being a female and our
Mm-hmm.
female organs. So they're saying that the uterus causes women to be emotionally unstable. This back in the 19th century. I'm sure we
Mm-hmm.
brought some of these ideas forward.
Mm-hmm.
That the uterus makes women emotionally unstable. So back in the 19th century, they give women hysterectomies. They take
Wow.
the, the uterus out to make them calm. And so in the 20th century, the myths moved to our ovaries, and they said, that our ovaries cause us, because they secrete hormones, they cause us to be unpredictable. Okay. And so we were eliminated from research studies because um, the researchers said, oh, they're too unpredictable. There's nothing we can do
Mm.
about it. And so, are there any other myths about men and emotions that you think would be important for us just to put on the table? Just to
Yeah.
set the stage.
Yeah, it's amazing, Doc. I've always, even in my matriculation through school, I've always had a problem with history being and when I mean history, talking about study and research,
Mm-hmm.
being the absolute to things that are constantly evolving,
Mm-hmm.
right? So when you say, back in the day, they said that women were emotional because of their organs. It's ludicrous. I mean, when you think about it, it's just crazy. And I think people did perhaps what they knew to do or the best they could do with the limited understanding and knowledge. And that's not an excuse, but I think that's a reality.
Mm-hmm.
And though it's true, I think it's unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
One of the major myths that I've kind of lived with and seen play out in my time in ministry as a pastor, and then just really in life as a man, and that is that men are weak if they express their feelings, right? This whole norm that men are never supposed to share, don't let them see you sweat and all of this stuff. I've said in funerals and done funerals where guys were sitting tight and tense with shades on because they didn't want anybody to see them crying. They
Mm-hmm.
didn't want anybody to see their eyes red as a result of the pain and hurt they were experiencing. And I think that myth that has been fostered on men is, in large part, manifested itself in a lot of violence and anger that men have because we're not taught to freely express our emotions. From
Mm-hmm.
a kid, the young brother is outside, he's out crying, out playing, and he falls down and he scrapes his knee. He
Mm-hmm.
runs inside, and to the woman who birthed him, that he loves and cares for, and in his mind, his world is not bigger than his mother. But that woman who he thinks the world of tells him, hey, don't you cry.
Mm-hmm.
Suck that up and go on back outside and pray. But my knee is killing me. And
Mm-hmm.
so from an early age, I think men are taught to bottle their emotions or to detach from them. And you and I both know you can't detach from your emotions. You can distance yourself from a minute, But that
Mhm.
emotion, if it's not expressed, is going to explode or implode. And so I think that's one of the myths that we have as it relates to men, that men's emotions uh, should never be expressed, right?
Mhm.
Don't
Mhm.
let nobody know how you feel. And
Mhm.
I think it hurts us in parenting. I definitely know it hurts us in relationships
Mhm.
with our significant others. And so that would be one of the myths that I would like to kind of talk to and address.
Well, you've covered a number of myths. The socialization of men
Hmm.
in our society to stuff their feelings,
Hmm.
the weakness,
Hmm.
um, uh, how it damages relationships, and um, that when you said that one, I know we're jumping around. We'll come back to the
Hmm.
myths and why men maybe bottle up their feelings, but you touched a chord there about men disconnecting themselves from their feelings.
Hmm.
And one of the things, and I'm always using my husband as an example, so I'll do it again. But one of the things is when we're having a discussion,
Hmm.
he calls them dust ups, but when we're having a discussion where we don't see eye to eye,
Hmm.
um, and then maybe in the middle of the discussion, he'll just either say, I don't know, I don't remember, or he'll say, I can't talk about this anymore. And that, for a woman,
Hmm.
it's just so irritating, you
Hmm.
know? Um, and why do men do that? Why do
Well,
they disconnect?
I think there are two things I'd like to say.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, I think whenever there is discussion between a man and a woman in any capacity, whether that is platonic, whether that's erotic, I think what happens a lot of times is that men have a tendency to forget that disagreement is inevitable, but division is always a choice.
Mm-hmm.
There will always be some differences in the way people see things. And not just because one's a man, one's a woman, but because they're two different individuals. It has nothing to do with, and no gender plays a part in it because of our makeup and experience and thought processes and what have you. And I think there's some legitimacy to that,
Mm-hmm.
not as much as we put on it, right? We're living in society. Well, I shouldn't say we're living in a society, but there's still this eerie notion that there is such a distinct difference between men and women, and
Mm-hmm.
and I think we've played that far too long, and it
Mm-hmm.
hasn't been to our benefit. I think it's been to our demise. Scriptures talk about He created them male and female,
Mm-hmm.
and when God looks at His creation, He didn't put one above the other.
That's
He
right.
gave different responsibilities, He gave different roles, and that was based upon his makeup or their makeup, but it was never intended for man to be greater and woman to be lesser, right? That
Mm-hmm.
was never. And I think it's kind of fostered over the years. And because of that uh, issue, because of that challenge, I think we've created a whole bunch of other problems. But that's
Mm-hmm.
another show within and of itself.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
think the vision, when there's conversations and discussions, I think we need to understand that, to disagree, again, it happens because we're different people.
Mm-hmm.
But to choose to stay divided is something that we have to correct. That's the first thing I'd like to say about that. The
Yeah.
second thing I'd like to say, to answer your question more directly, when it comes down to men shutting down, the average man, if he has any life experiences, knows that to continue in a discussion where there's definitely a disagreement, sometimes he shuts down because he knows he's not going to win that. He knows there's going to be no convincing
Mm-hmm.
of the woman or whoever it is, because it just doesn't happen with men and women. It happens with men and men. I've
That's
I've
right.
had conversations with brothers when I'm talking to them about various issues, and they can see, well, yeah, you may be right. And sometime before a brother admits he's wrong, and I think women may have this challenge too,
Mm-hmm.
they'll just stop conversating. So sometimes the shutdown is
Mm-hmm.
to save face,
Mm-hmm.
or sometimes it is a I'm out of words.
Mm-hmm.
I just I'm out of words. I don't think it's a lack of interest.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times sisters think that he's not interested. No, he just cannot find the words to articulate right now. And he does not want to be, especially if he loves this woman, he
Mm-hmm.
does not want to be disrespectful, nor does he want to be dismissive. But oftentimes shutting down does give that idea that he's being dismissive. But when a man is quiet, it's because he's thinking. It's not because he's checked out.
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness. Say that one more time, Bishop.
When a man goes quiet,
Mm-hmm.
it's because he's thinking, he's processing. He has not checked out.
Mm-hmm.
He's just waiting for an opportune moment to articulate how he feels. And I stress a man. Now, a grown male,
Mm-hmm.
a guy who's got age, but he's still got a young mentality,
Mm-hmm.
and then, he'll pout, kick, and scream. But a real man, if there's a discussion going on and he retreats, is because he's getting his thoughts together.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, Bishop, thank you. You're packing a lot in, and I just want to reset right now.
Mm-hmm.
And those viewers who have just joined us, I am Dr. Paulina Van, the host of the Poetry of Healing, and today we are talking about men and emotions. And our special guest is Bishop Keith Clark, and we've just been talking about myths around
Mm-hmm.
men and emotions, and we've kind of navigated to why men may be unable or feel that they're unable to express their emotions, or they bottle up their emotions, or they stuff their emotions. And so the one of the last things you said, Bishop, was a man may not have the words
Mm-hmm.
to express. So he may not have the language to
Mm-hmm.
express how he's feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And so my request is, can you speak to the lack of role models for men
Mm-hmm.
as it relates to being emotionally communicative?
Yeah, I think it is, it definitely exists, and it's unfortunate. But when men are, I don't want to say raised, but when men are being cultivated, let me say that,
Mm-hmm.
and he finds a mentor, finds someone, be it his father, uncle, what have you. Most times, men are trained to conduct themselves in a manner where they can be respected. Men are taught to be responsible so they can be respected, because men spell love Respect. Men, if you want to let a man know you love him, then show him respect. He doesn't need the gifts and the trimmings and all of that, but respect. And so, because we're raised to be responsible so that we can be respected, a lot of times when the relationship calls for an expression of emotion, when it calls for man to say how he feels, when it calls for a man to describe what he needs, oftentimes a man does that from a place yearning for respect. If that's making any sense, giving an example. Let's say he comes home and he's been, putting in the hours at work and dealing with the hustle and bustles of life. And he comes home and nobody there at the house um, shows any kind of appreciation, right? It's just, hey, that's what you're supposed to do, or da 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 da. Now he's feeling unappreciated, which is assigned to him as disrespect.
Mhm.
Or, and not necessarily this, but no respect, right? Because there's disrespect when you could have an opportunity, you just don't do it. And then you disrespect, there's an opportunity for you to show a man that you appreciate him, you show he's important to you, and you just pass that moment up. That would be disrespect. But then there's a time where there's no respect, where you don't even consider to do that to him. It's in those moments that he hasn't been trained to articulate, hey, this is not making me feel right. Because to do that in a man's mind,
Mhm.
oh man, you weak. If you go home and tell your wife, you know what, babe, I sure would like when I come home, you tell me you love me and you
Mhm.
appreciate me. To voice that
Mhm.
in a calm and respectable way, he can kind of feel kind of soft, that's weak.
Mhm.
And because he feels that way, and because he hasn't been trained to communicate and talk that out, so now the emotion that does come is anger.
Mhm.
You see, when we talk about men expressing emotions, the reality is most times we do express the emotions, but it's always the anger one.
Mhm.
We have no problem with letting folk know when we're mad. It's the other stuff when we're feeling left out, when we're feeling unappreciated, when there's no gratitude that is shown. All of those things hurt us. And I think when we talk about men not being able to express their feelings, number one, we weren't trained to do it. But then the moments that we did do it, we were frowned upon. We were looked upon as you soft. I've known Dr. Van, and God knows this is so unfortunate, but it's true. And it's not rare, it happens all the time.
Mhm.
I've known too many men who are for the most part, good men, but who suffer because they surround themselves or they're connected with people who don't value them.
Mhm.
And oftentimes, again, you don't think, come on, let's look at it. Let's be honest.
Mhm.
Think of Mother's Day and think of Father's Day. Now, here, Mother's Day, I mean, you can't get a seat at a restaurant.
Yes.
Everybody packed from Sizzler.
Mhm.
But Father's Day, it's wide open,
Mhm.
right? Because I think the emphasis a lot of times has not been put on the value from an appreciative gratitude perspective of what a man brings to the table. And
Mhm.
so a lot of times what sisters are seeing, what children experience, is not that dad, husband is not a good man,
Mhm.
is that he's oftentimes a good man who doesn't feel appreciated and valued. Now, let me say this, and this is to those brothers who are watching. No man can be respected when he's not responsible.
Mhm.
You can only respect a man when he's responsible. And every man thrives on respect. The unfortunate part is that there are guys demanding respect who are not responsible. And that's a serious problem. And that may be a discussion for another time.
Mhm.
But for those men who are responsible, it is respect that they desire. It is respect that they need. And when that does not happen, it is hard for him to articulate that other than when he's backed up against a corner and he's angry.
Wow. Uh, we definitely have to do a program on respect,
Yes,
men and respect. But
yes.
one of the things you brought up so much again, but one of the things you touched on is vulnerability.
Mm-hmm,
Okay, when it
mm-hmm,
comes to men expressing emotion and the weakness. But I just want to describe vulnerability for our audience. And
mm-hmm,
it's when a person willingly takes the risk
mm-hmm,
to reveal their emotions and
mm-hmm,
their weaknesses,
mm-hmm,
emotions and I won't say, well, weaknesses, vulnerabilities,
Mm-hmm.
sensitivities.
Mm-hmm.
And, Bishop, I wrote a poem on
Mm-hmm.
vulnerability, and I did a
Mm-hmm.
show on vulnerability, and I think it might be a good point to just read it
Mm-hmm.
right now. And it's on page 71 in the physical book, and it's called Being Vulnerable. Being vulnerable. Oh, and I'm assuming this is my book, Regala Healing, and I'll have information how you can get it later at the end of the show. But right now, I'd like to read the poem.
Mm-hmm.
Being vulnerable is frightening. Being vulnerable is enlightening. Being vulnerable draws others near. Being vulnerable creates fear. Being vulnerable transforms my thinking. Being vulnerable gives me an inkling. Being vulnerable is living. Being vulnerable creates giving. Being vulnerable is turning within. Being vulnerable is how I and you win.
Mm-hmm.
And and
Mm-hmm.
so, Bishop, you touched on that as you talked about how men, or why men, or what are the situations
Mm-hmm.
that really promote vulnerability and maybe hamper vulnerability as it relates to men expressing their emotions. But the other thing is, you talked about anger.
Mm-hmm.
And men, I mean, it's okay. Little boys, it's okay. Teens, young men, the
Mm-hmm.
anger is an emotion that's accepted, but it's
Mm-hmm.
those soft ones, the positive ones like joy and
Mm-hmm.
happiness
Mm-hmm.
and warmth. Those emotions may not be modeled or promoted
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
among our men.
Mm-hmm.
One last thing before we move on to consequences, because I know that
Mm-hmm.
is really the crux of your message today. Well, that's what it was when we began, but now we're seeing so many other
Mm-hmm.
things be uncovered. Let's talk about the uncomfortable nature of expressing one's emotion. It's called somatic reality, the sensations we feel physically
Mm-hmm.
when we express an emotion. So, for example, anger. When you get
Mm-hmm.
angry, your jaw may get tense.
Mm-hmm.
I know when I get anxious,
Mm-hmm.
I get a knot in my stomach, or if I'm ashamed, I get a knot in my stomach.
Mm-hmm.
So, do the men in your group talk about the discomfort associated with expressing emotion, or how can you illuminate that for us and help us understand? Mhm,
Let me go back a tad bit,
mhm,
excuse me, to when you talk about vulnerability, and that's an amazing poem. I think that piece of poetry that you read, and I have the book, and it is definitely a blessing. I think vulnerability, as you've eloquently said throughout the piece of poetry you just read, I think for men, vulnerability needs to be understood that it's the door that opens for both healing and hurt. You run the risk when you're vulnerable, the blessing of being helped and the pain of being hurt. So when it comes down to a man being vulnerable, most times he's not looking at the opportunity to be helped and or healed.
mhm,
He's only looking at the pain that can cause if I'm wide open.
mhm,
When it comes down to the emotion of anger, and you know this, that you're always something before you're angry, right? You're out hurt, overlooked, like you said, shame. There's always something before anger. And I think anger is the emotion that is most expressed because the other emotions are hard to express.
mhm,
And I think they're hard to express because we don't see them modeled in men, because to see them modeled in men in our culture has always been viewed as either being feminine, weak, soft. Uh, what other word that comes to mind? Uh,
Loss of control.
Loss of control. But there's another one that was just thinking.
Mhm.
A man doesn't want to express those because he feels as though he is not manly,
Mm.
right? It kind of lends, and this is Pride Month, and shouts out to all of those who are part of that community. We thank God for you. But oftentimes when a man is expressing himself, he's labeled as something other than just a strong, that kind of old, I got it all together.
Mhm.
And it's ludicrous because no man does.
Mhm.
No man has it all together. Every man is a work in process. But
Mhm.
we are trained to present ourselves as if we've got it together. That's why you can see a guy uh, in a nice car, looking good, clean, decked out, and got bad credit and no money because
Mhm.
he's trained to present himself well. So the image is good, but in reality, it's all torn up, and it's all tore up because I think this issue of expressing our emotions, we have not created safe environments. Let me say it that way.
Mm.
We have not created safe environments for men to express those emotions
Mhm.
that every human being has. Bishop Jakes wrote a book some years ago entitled He Motions. And in that, he talked about the very same thing we're talking about, how the challenge of men to communicate effectively how they're feeling, right?
Mhm.
And it's necessary. And those brothers who are listening to me now, I invite you to spend some time with you and learn to get in touch with how you're feeling. And then love the people enough, and prayerfully the people that you're going to do this with, you're convinced that they love you. Share with them how you are feeling. Don't run the risk. Well, let me say it this way. Do what she does. She's always telling you how she feels.
Mhm.
She's always telling you what she thinks. Carve out some time and say, hey, sweetie, this is how I'm feeling. And I say to those sisters who have men, be it husband, son, nephew, father, uncle, when that man says to you, this is how I'm feeling, embrace that. Don't try to, well, you shouldn't feel that way. And that's a bad thing we do. When people tell you how they feel, we quickly say, well, you shouldn't feel that way. Wait a minute now. How you going to tell me how to feel?
Mhm.
Right. And so what I share with guys, you mentioned Tuesday night, what I'm trying to teach guys, and I'm learning myself, that when you deal with how you feel, life is better. What makes, in my estimation, what makes life rough and what makes life smooth is when we can deal properly with how we feel.
Mhm.
Imagine if everybody would identify how they feel. This is how I'm feeling. And then respond properly to that. Feelings are indicators. They should never be dictators.
Ah, love that.
Feelings, yeah, feelings are just it's telling about where you are in that moment, but it's never permanent. That's the thing that becomes so challenging because we think oftentimes how we feel is how we're always going to feel, whether that's good or bad.
Mm.
There's some people, well, I'm living on the mountaintop. I'm living, everything's going well. And they have this feeling and they're chasing that. And when life hits and the happenings are not happening anymore, and that feeling's not there, then they come apart, only to understand that life does change. Sometimes it's a result of choices we make. Sometimes it's just the cards we're dealt with. But when I take how I feel, not denying it, but I deal with how I feel properly, I'll come out on the better end. I've got this sermon I'm working on now
Mm-hmm.
entitled Winners, and it deals with an issue of feelings. And feelings can make us think that we're not winning. But a winner is somebody who comes out of a situation better than they were when they went in.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get to understand that all of us have an opportunity to win, watch this, not in spite of how we feel, in light of how we feel,
Mm-hmm.
then man, we as my grandma say, you cooking with grease then. you,
Love it.
you got something going there. Yeah.
Yes, yes,
Mm-hmm.
Bishop Clark,
Mm-hmm.
uh, you're preaching.
Yeah,
Are you?
it's and I one of the things when you shared with me about this show,
Mm-hmm.
one of the things like I was excited about to have an opportunity to just tell men that it's okay when you're not okay. You don't have to have it all together all the time, man. You sometimes we put pressure on ourselves and we put this standard on ourselves, and people who really love us, brothers, people who really love us will give us room to be human.
Mm-hmm.
When you, man, find somebody who is willing to give you the space to say, hey, today ain't a good day for me. Right now is not a good moment for me. You've got a good partner, you've got a good friend, you've got a good woman, you've got a good crew, you've got a good circle. Because I wanted to say to brothers, and I can't stress it, Doc, and I stop me if I'm going too far. Man, it's okay for you not to be okay. It's okay for you to express your feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And when you understand that expressing your feelings is key to your betterment, then you will take the time to find the words to say to her. When you understand that when you express, let's say it this way, when feelings are expressed, you have an opportunity to do your best.
Mm-hmm.
When feelings are expressed, you have the opportunity to do your best. And when you understand that, you will then be intentional about the words you choose.
Mm-hmm.
So when I want to express to my wife how I'm feeling, and I know that me expressing this is going to bring out the best in me, then I'll take the time to say, hey, D, I don't, this statement or this behavior makes me feel a certain way. Now, there are two things that, and this is for men and women, there are two things that have to be considered when you're getting ready to express your feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can get these two things, it's a game changer. That's timing and tone. Timing.
And
When are you going to express this? And your tone. How are you going to express it?
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, some would say, well, it don't matter. I got to say, no, 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 no. If the goal is to have your feelings or your expressions received and heard, then it's on the responsibility of the person who's sharing or expressing the emotion to do that at the right time
Mm-hmm.
and with the right tone, because you want to be received. You just don't want to be heard. You want to be received. You want people to understand you. So timing and tone is crucial when learning, brothers and sisters. But since this is a men thing, when to express your feelings. You know, don't tell her you mad at how she behaved at the wedding when y'all come back from the reception. No, then that you may mess up your night, man.
The week, he may mess up a few
Yeah.
weeks.
Yeah, ask the Lord to give you the wisdom
Mhm.
when when it's nice and sunny, and you say, "Now, sweetie, I want to sit down and talk to you. What's that, darling?" And then you can begin to express how you feel. That's the right time, and then you're going to deliver it in the right tone. Now, when you get the right time and the right tone, and you express your feelings, then I believe people who love you will normally respond the right way.
Mhm. Mhm. And Bishop Clark, one of the things that has come to my mind as you're sharing all of this wisdom about men and communicating their emotions and allowing themselves to feel these emotions and that it's natural, is that you're not going to appear needy or unattractive to your mate if you do this. I
Yes,
I think you become
yes,
more attractive,
yes,
right?
yes, yes,
Mhm.
yes.
Mhm.
And sometimes when a man expresses his feelings, he really sees the kind of people he's dealing with.
Mhm. Mhm.
If and you're exactly right, Dr. Van. If you're expressing your feelings is going to make and I would say this to the brothers like this on Tuesday night. If you sharing how you feel is going to make your woman lose respect for you, then it's better for you to know that now than to find that out later.
Mhm.
If
Yeah.
she can't handle you at the right time, with the right tone, expressing how you feel, and she thinks you're weak, she thinks you need it, then it may be she's just not the person for you. And in fact about it, now this is interesting, and I would have to believe it's divine.
Mhm.
I'm counseling a young man right now who's going through a similar situation in a relationship where he's been expressing what he feels and what he needs. And the sister has made it clear to her, and you don't like it, but you've got it is what it is. She said to him, she said, I just what you're needing from me and what you're saying from me, that's not something I want to give at this point in my life.
Mhm.
And so he's saying to me, Bishop, what's wrong with me? And my response to him, nothing's wrong with you. There is nothing wrong with you. You were very clear on how you feel. You were very clear on what you need. She responded what she couldn't do. So now, yeah, you hurt your ego, put a little ice on your
Mhm.
ego. But then thank God that you found out early
Mhm.
what her thought process or mentality was about how you feel or what you needed, because that's not going to change.
Mhm.
And a lot of times, because men can't express their feelings, now,
Mhm.
a lot of people don't want to hear this, Doc, but it's true.
Mhm.
Men settle a whole lot more than women. Yeah, I
Uh,
that
can we say a little bit more about that?
men settle more than women. When you think about relationships and you hear about relationships, you always hear the woman's perspective, or the woman being encouraged. Don't settle. If he doesn't have this, he doesn't have this, he doesn't have that. You, and I use you as a state. I
Mhm.
knew when you were in search the list you had. And we prayed that. So I understand that there are reasons a woman should have standard, and you modeled that, and God has blessed you.
Mhm.
But I think equally, oftentimes, a man needs to have the same kind of standard and commitment to
Mhm.
what it is he's looking for. And
Mhm.
oftentimes that is not told to a man,
Mhm.
right? That's not promoted from a man, right? Just take what. So here's a man, he's educated, he's went to school, he's practiced the discipline. And for him to say he wants a woman who's educated, or a woman who's went through that same kind of discipline to accomplish his goal, oh man, you asking for too much.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
don't need all that. Just get you somebody that's gonna love you. And so men, a lot of men have settled in that they chose women who perhaps were good to them, but in the long run were not good for them.
Mhm.
So please understand, those who are watching, that sisters are not the only one having problems with finding mates and finding partners that are uh, compatible and conducive to their dreams and goals. Men have the same issues.
Mhm. Mhm. And Bishop, I'd like to roll back to the example you gave about when a man expresses his feelings and how the woman responded, and he was hurt. But I want to take my hat off to both of them, because he was true. He spoke
Yes,
his truth, and
that's
she
exactly right.
spoke her truth,
You
and
are exactly
so
right.
they know up front. I just want to say that to those of you who are just joining us, this show normally goes 30 minutes. As you can see, we've passed that, and we're coming
Oh wow, I'm sorry.
to Oh no, don't um, apologize, because this is what needed to be said. This is
Hmm.
what was our prayer before we signed on, that we would share
Hmm.
what needed to be shared with our viewers. So this is wonderful. It just means we need a part two.
Okay.
But we've covered reasons why men may not express their emotions. We've moved into some things that men can do, and those around them can do to support them to express their feelings. And I know, uh, Bishop Clark, that you wanted to talk about stress and
Hmm.
men's emotions. So we have time for you to cover the impact of it's a negative impact when men do not express their emotions.
Hmm.
So would you mind sharing that?
Yes, and it's from a life experience, not my own, but my brother's. My brother was diagnosed with prostate cancer about maybe 3.5 years ago. And God is blessed. Things are going well. Numbers are extremely low. And we praise God for that. But when going into the doctor, and after one of the doctor visits, maybe second or third time, and my brother, Bishop J. Mack, who pastors the church in Tracy, our word church in Tracy, is a pretty healthy guy. I mean, he's a personal trainer to a lot of people.
Mhm.
And so physically, he's together and he eats well, much better than I do. He stays away from certain vices that can damage your health. And so upon one of his visits, when he found out he had prostate, um, he said to, he was talking to the doctor, and the doctor said to him, he said, Bishop, it's unfortunate, but most men who are suffering from these various ailments and what have you, two things. He said, first of all, they could get treated and live much longer and better if they get checked up, right? They come and get their checkup, and we know that. He says, but 87% of the stuff that happens in a man's body is triggered by stress. His diet and a lack of exercise has a lot to do with it. But stress is the result of emotions that are not expressed.
Mhm.
When you think about the stress level that people deal with, in particularly men, and particularly African American men, man, wow. When you think about that and not having a place to express that, then that stress just kind of builds and builds and builds and builds and builds. And then some men run to self-medicate it. Some men run to try to deal with that in a manner that's not morally conducive.
Mhm.
But all of it could be dealt with, and health could be preserved, and illness can be prevented if we would just express it, talk out. That's why Tuesday night is so crucial for so many brothers. And that's why we went to the club, Doc, because I wanted a place where men could feel comfortable saying what's going on with them. Give it a perfect example. Last night we start at 7.
Mhm.
And so it's check in, me teaching, dinner, we gone.
Mhm.
I taught for maybe 15 minutes because 45 minutes, close to an hour, 50 minutes actually,
Mhm.
men were just talking. in a room with other men. And one brother stood up and said, "Thank you guys for coming back in person, because now I have a place to come where I can share what I'm dealing with." No answers. I was talking about prayer. Some of these guys, well, prayer is an answer for, it's suitable for every situation. But it's not always a guy's telling what he's saying, and I come back with a word that addresses that issue. But he is helped because he's able to express it. The Apostle Paul, and I say this in closing, the Apostle Paul says something to the church at Philippi that's amazing. He says, "Be anxious for nothing, but by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known unto God." Watch this. "And the peace of God, which passeth all understanding, shall guard your hearts and minds." Here's the interesting thing about that passage. What Paul is literally saying, pray about everything, worry about nothing. Now, we've heard that before in various ways. But here's the beauty. Nowhere in the passage that Paul says when you pray, make your requests and your supplications unto God, that you get an answer to your prayer. But yet he says you'll have peace. The peace doesn't come in the answer. The peace comes in the talking.
Yes.
The peace doesn't come in God giving you what you ask for. And that's not to say he's not. But the peace that he offers is not in you getting the answer. The peace that he's offered is you expressing how you feel. Let's look at it this way. Have you ever had something that was just on your heart? You needed to tell a friend, and it was just something that is exciting, something. And as soon as you were able to let that out, instantly, and you hear somebody say, "Man, I'm glad I got that off my chest."
And on that note,
Yes.
we gotta wrap up. It's the end of our time, but we're gonna continue this conversation. Bishop, I want to thank you for
Thank you, Doc.
being here on this Father's Day, teaching, and you didn't intend to preach, but you did give us a word, and
Praise God.
I hope that our viewers will share this segment of this program with every man they know, and ladies, this applies to you too. You can take this and run with it as well. And so, on closing, I just ask that you please join me every first and third Sunday at 9 a.m. Pacific time, right here on blackdoctor.org. Please like and share this program. Leave comments. I do read and respond to your questions. I'm going to ask Bishop Clark to take a look too and drop his wisdom in the chat in response to you. And visit my site, regalahealing.com, and learn more about my healing and self-care work and resources. I'm also going to drop in the chat the information about the men's group for those of you in the Bay Area that you might want to visit Bishop Clark. Bishop Clark, thank you, thank you, thank you. And as always, I wish you love and light until I see you again.
Bless you. Thank you so much, Doc. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you.